Paul St-Pierre Plamondon, of course, leader of the PQ, reacting to the story from the other day, suggesting that that Leger poll, where 65% of people say they would vote no in a referendum and 59% said they're simply not interested even having it. Apparently, he doesn't care about the polls, and he's trying to use, I guess, the reference that, you know what, just because it's not top of mind doesn't mean we're not going to deal with it. So basically, James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette, so Jim, he's basically saying, the hell with the polls, I'm going to go ahead and do this because I promised I would, right?
Yeah, and when you hear that clip, Aaron, there is a kind of a Boy Scouty kind of, I may not agree with the guy, but at least listen, this is based on his reaction to the poll yesterday in an interview he gave with TVA. Do you want to hear what else he said?
Yeah.
He said, and this is my translation, the Canadian model is leading us to problems of social peace. The current model of uncontrolled immigration, of the absence of shared citizenship, the obvious absence of shared culture and language, is leading us straight into a wall. This model cannot lead to social peace in Quebec. We have to realize this.
Okay.
Bit of a different tone. No,
yeah, a very different tone. Yeah, they're 180 degrees apart. I mean, there's no question, right?
Absolutely. And what's kind of funny is, to be fair, the reporter who interviewed him kind of buried the lead. You have to get down to the bottom of the story to actually read this, okay? And believe me, in Quebec, social peace has all kinds of interpretations, okay? And has for decades. Back in the 80s, social peace meant, making sure you invoke the notwithstanding clause on Bill 101, lest someone who put up an English sign have a brick through their window that night. That was the idea of ensuring social peace. What does this mean? I'm not entirely sure, but I got to tell you, Aaron, this is the second time, because there's a suggestion in this quote that, when he says the absence of shared citizenship, the obvious absence of shared culture and language, he is not talking about people named Tremblay. He's not even talking about people named Mennie. He's talking about people from, as they say out east, from away. He's talking about immigrants, and it's clear that this whole, and he even mentions by name the idea uncontrolled immigration. Remember, he raised some eyebrows even in the French media not that long ago when he suggested there was a link between a spike in youth crime and immigration. And I remember one rather dazed-looking commentator saying, perhaps Monsieur St-Pierre Plamondon should choose his words more carefully. And I have a sneaking suspicion that he knows exactly what he's doing here. I think that people like Paul St-Pierre Plamondon and other sovereigntists realize this is it's not even their last kick at the can. These poll numbers that came out this week that show 65% would vote no and 59% don't even want to have a referendum. The stink is already coming off the body. Like I say, Lassie's not dead, sleeping; she's dead. Stop kicking this idea of sovereignty as an option. On veut rien savoir là-dessus. Okay, but they can't because, as I say, he's put himself into this straitjacket by absolutely pledging to have a referendum. And I got to tell you, and I'm so happy, Aaron, that I know for a fact you do this show sitting down, because what I'm about to tell you right now. The comments that he made yesterday were such that no less a personage than Pablo Rodriguez reacted to them today. Okay, he turned around and basically said, "Oh, you think it's threatening social peace? You know what's unsettling for Quebecers? Another referendum." And he also made in the same interview, St-Pierre Plamondon had said, there are some who would prefer that we let ourselves die, or that the problems worsen in terms of funding our services rather than take responsibility, i.e., go ahead and create a new Quebec. And basically, as Liberals have said in the past, and as many critics of the PQ have said in the past, you don't get to define who is a real Quebecer, who is a good Quebecer, okay? We're all Quebecers. We're all proud Quebecers. So, yes, I'm glad to see signs of life from the Quebec Liberal Party. It's unfortunate, I think, that it took this kind of a comment. But on the other hand, you know what? Better late than never. And quite frankly, I think we should be paying a lot more attention to what the head of the PQ is saying on a daily basis, and a lot of attention to what he says in French. Because we just had a perfect example of how you heard this kind of like, Baden-Powell, I will not, swerve from my given word. That's what we have to do. I'm not going to be swayed by the polls. to what I just quoted to you from which is from a TVA interview that was posted yesterday afternoon, as you and I were talking about something else. But here's the thing. I'm getting a little worried because if this is the tone now, if this is the direction we're headed in, this does not bode well, even for the outcome of never mind the outcome of the election, but quite simply the public perception of what is happening to Quebec. There was an echo, as far as I'm concerned, in this idea that there are some who would prefer that we let ourselves die. You'll recall François Legault's infamous, if we increase immigration, it'll be suicidal. Right? Well, we'll end up like Louisiana. But this idea that suddenly this is a life and death situation, it didn't work for François Legault. I hope maybe St-Pierre Plamondon may profit from that example and perhaps dial it down or lose in French and English this kind of tone that things are headed off a cliff because we happen to be a part of Canada.
To go back to Pablo Rodriguez for a second, which is interesting, as we talked the other day about, where is Pablo kind of situation. So here he is. But if I'm reading this right, he also said today he would like one day for Quebec to sign the Canadian Constitution. And I'm thinking, where the hell did that come from?
Well, that's because, once again, St-Pierre Plamondon was saying it's an illegitimate document. That it's the British who did this. It's colonial. It's a colonial act in 1867. It was done without the democratic consent of Quebecers. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, I am a student, but I'm an expert in history. I don't believe the expression Quebecers or Québécois even existed in 1867, but I'll give the benefit of the doubt to Mr. St-Pierre Plamondon. But this is it, Aaron. This is the tone of the rhetoric that's coming down the pike. This is, and I really get uncomfortable when I hear things like this because the suggestion is, well, if something happens, you were warned. If something goes horribly wrong, you were warned about it. There's a will within. There's a will, as far as I'm going to say that we're going to hit social peace will no longer endure if this Canada that you live in right here, right now, which we all know is far from perfect, but hardly the Armageddon that's being suggested here by the head of the PQ. But apparently, if you buy into that, perhaps you'll be an accomplice to whatever horrible thing happens down the road. I don't like the tone of this. I don't like the implicit threat in comments like this, whether they come from anybody, but especially from someone who seems to be the premier in waiting. Maybe that'll change between now and next October, Aaron. But my God, when I start seeing stuff like that, I really start wondering which way we're headed in terms of simple politics in this province.
So let me go to something we found out this morning. We were told again, STM maintenance workers, guess what? They can go on strike again in November, and they plan to, and this would last basically through the course of the month. So here's another situation, right? Government can't come to a kind of a deal here. And my favorite part of the story, Jim, is if we believe what the union is saying, they've had 115 negotiation sessions and still can't work out a deal. It's like Canada Post.
Well, but the other thing as well, and the far more immediate concern as far as I'm concerned, is, and then listen, as far as I'm concerned, with the STM, there are no good guys in that story. You can't back management or the union. I think they're both very entêtés, as we say in these parts, in their positions. I don't think anyone's willing to give each other a break. But here's the thing. The strike begins on the evening of October 31st and continues for a month, including, November 2nd. Now, during the last strike, regular or weekend bus service was running, as far as I recall.
Yeah.
However, in their announcement this morning, they say, well, we'll maintain rush hour service, but outside of that, we can't guarantee there won't be stoppages or slowdowns. And I'm wondering whether, indeed, when they do sit down with management or they both sit down in front of the Quebec Labor Tribunal and give their submissions to what constitute essential services, whether, in fact, people who might have to rely upon public transit to get to their polling office will, in fact, be able to take a bus, will, in fact, be able to ride the metro the entirety of that voting day. I mean, it seems silly, but you know what? This came out of left field, and as I say, I cannot ignore the fact that this work action is taking place in the middle of what many people would consider to be an extremely crucial election for Montreal's future, and one where getting the vote out is perhaps the biggest job facing every party involved.
Look, you kind of wonder, is the government pushed into a corner here, Jim? Like, how long do we keep taking this kind of stuff happening before the government says, okay, we got to do something?
I mean, I don't know how long Jean Boulet, because he's kind of itching to pull that legislative trigger, right? He's got his new bill there, and he says, well, if the Republic's right to whatever essential services is being compromised by a strike that goes on too long, but which is one of the reasons why these things are being broken up, Aaron, that they're not perpetual sieges. They last, in this particular instance, for a month, but the last time was 2 weeks, and it wasn't every day of the week. But all that said, if the disruption is sufficient, will Jean Boulet invoke whatever article, in his legislation allows the provincial government to order a union back to work a la federales, right, as the feds have done with Via Rail and Canada Post and God knows who else. It'll be interesting to see. As I said in the past, the CAQ doesn't owe anything to Montreal, but right now I think they'll grab any life preserver as they splash around in political obscurity. Maybe they will try and score some points with the greater Montreal area by saying, no, sorry, no more strikes. You know what? We'll take it to arbitration. We'll do whatever. But you guys, enough with this. Enough with the disruptions, and that's that. But once again, will it happen next week? Will it happen next month? Or will it happen in 3 weeks' time? Who knows? But I have a sneaking suspicion that sooner or later, Jean Boulet will be pushed into some kind of action.
I want to just get you to weigh in really quick. My question today concerns this whole situation with another group, doctors, medical specialists. We know now both associations have stopped teaching. That becomes an issue. Kids in med school not going to be able to graduate on time. Where does this one end up, Jim? I asked the simple question of our listeners. If you're taking sides in this particular discussion, are you with the doctors or the government on this side?
Well, sorry. I'm on the side of the people whose skills would have to, at one point in time, God forbid, open me up and then sew me back up again. And quite frankly, given the fanfare with which Santé Quebec was introduced with their top guns and the high salaries, how in the hell did you manage even to pick a fight with every doctor in Quebec is beyond me. But here we are. Congratulations, Monsieur Legault. You've done it again.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Introducing Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
Join me for an insider look on a wild ride through 40 years of global rock and roll.
Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app. Or ask your smart speaker to play Bryan Adams Radio on iHeartRadio.
Who's ready to rock?
Kids wanna rock.